What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I like to talk a little bit about blocks, and resistance, and how these can manifest in many different forms in many different areas. In this particular conversation, it's going to be more directed towards like healing and like well-being, physical well-being, and stuff like that. And it's important to whenever you're experiencing any type of spiral, fear, reactivity, especially when it comes to like either your physical well-being or people around you. I've noticed this, when it comes to my dog, actually, because I've been kind of, dealing with just a bunch of drama with, shit going on with her, learning a lot of things through this drama, but not really trying to continuously manifest that more and more so. It's like, recognizing, okay, well, there's something going on, and then you can start to check the inner conversations in your own being whenever you're seeing somebody like going through some physical ailment, sickness, disease, or whatever, where it's just like life-threatening types of problems. I noticed this too with my dad, when he was in the process of dying. So many mental stories and narratives that are going on, and a lot of it, causes so much inner torment, to you, and not just like the person that's sick and whatnot. And so it's like, okay, well, what can I do to help the situation? The first step is to start checking your inner conversations, because if you're seeing something in a loved one or someone around you or whatever, first thing to realize is that you are connected with them, in a metaphysical way, that we're still kind of learning what that even means. But your thoughts towards the situation are very important, along with your actions. But realizing more and more so that what you're telling yourself, what you're imagining, are you imagining them getting worse and worse and worse, the symptoms and things starting to spread, becoming a compounding issue of like, oh, it's a whole cascade of failures now. It's like, it's first it's an ear infection, now it's wetting the bed, now it's can't barely move, now it's this, now it's that, so it's just spiraling. Well, a big part of like that spiral is your attention towards this perceived problem, and basically a metaphysical principle of what you resist persists. Not to say when things going on outside of you are showing an illusion, to sit there and pretend the illusion's real, and to then battle and resist it and fight against it. But realize this is still part of this awakening process, and that no matter what happens, I'm going to choose to experience love in this moment and not fear. Because our old slave mind will see a problem, see like a healing opportunity, sickness or whatever, and immediately get into reactivity mode. Immediately start, God doesn't exist. Why isn't God healing this person? And immediately starts attacking. Doubting. If you're not in faith, you're in doubt. As part of like creation, is there's really only two states of being. But there's many variations on those two states. But those two states are, you're either in fear, which is a belief in that separation, that you're separate from the event, you're separate from the things going on around you, separate from God, separate from all these different things, or you're blessed, and you realize that God is within you, you're connected to that supply. Healing, comes from God. It's like a part of our old mindset likes to believe things of the world, where it's like, well, no, what you got to do is you got to choke down this pill, and then that pill heals you. And it's like, I was really starting to think about that, as like, I've been dealing with like, pain and shit, which, as I've been losing weight, it's really been beneficial, not really making a story out of the pain and shit, and really trying to occupy the state of already being healed. And that gets to the next point, which I'll get to here in a minute, about the law of assumption when it comes to the people around you that maybe fell into a state of disease or whatever. They kind of fell from grace, and now they're experiencing a lack of that love energy, that healing energy. But like moving in the next logical step here. It's like you start to embody how you would feel if that person was, or animal or whatever, was already healed. And also, start looking towards Jesus, in the Bible, to see how these different types of healing miracles happen. Because part of like our new beingness, our new, like your new creation in Christ, like resonating with that truth versus your old minds and logic from the world. So it's like, when it comes to like taking pills and shit, it's like, why do we think that these things are healing? Especially when you look at so much evidence of like the placebo effect, where you could take a sugar pill, and then next thing your quote unquote disease starts to clear up. In a material world that is functioning based on like material, like hydrogen plus oxygen makes water. It's like that placebo effect should not happen. So the only kind of explanation is the stories and the narratives that you start telling yourself as you're taking these different pills and these different pharmaceuticals. Not to say to stop taking anything, because I think it's all really boils down to your faith and your identity on whether or not you believe that healing process. If you start looking at it more of like a process, I know in my own self, like the slave mind programming, when it comes to like miraculous healing, it immediately thinks of almost magical, where it's like, boom, get up and walk, you're healed. But if you look towards Jesus and the way he healed different people, a lot of times you had like a miraculous thing where it's like get up and walk, but it's that person's faith is ultimately what is being demonstrated. So it's like, not only was there examples of healing miracles that were just instantaneous, but there's also examples of, rub some dirt in your eyes or whatever, or mud or clay or whatever for 3 days, and that'll heal the problem. Go down to this river, this is another biblical example. Go down to this river for 7 days, jump into it, bathe in it, come out. So it's like there's multiple forms and processes of healing. So to look at only having one manifestation of healing is really limiting, and it also could be a limiting belief and assumption that can block the actual healing. Because if you start putting your attention on all these different problems instead of the healing that's already inherent, that's already there, you're only growing more problems. So catching like these downward spirals starts in recognizing the narratives that you're telling yourself, for one, whether or not you're just being reactive to a fear, for two, and then if that fear then continues to make you reactive, well, then it starts to build and get bigger and bigger of a problem the more that you believe in its reality. And so you start to move your attention away from the illness and more towards the progress of what's going right. And ultimately, looking at another very important teaching of Jesus, where it's like you acknowledge to your own mind, your own consciousness, that your ego can do nothing. So whenever your slave mind wants to tell you to get to work, you got to do this, to help the healing, all these processes. And this is like a line of discernment where I'm still kind of learning this stuff too, and putting it into practice. But it's like, there becomes a cooperative thing where it's like, okay, well, obviously if my got a massive wound on my hand, it makes logical sense, based on my programming and life experience, to clean it, to wash it, put water on it, clean out the dirt and everything, and provide a good environment for the body's own ability to heal. But like there's also differences, when you get a wound that you're not worried about. There's no mental story about it. There's no resistance towards it. It's just there's like a knowing that this is not a problem. Whereas you could have another wound, then all of a sudden it's like, well, this could get infected. I need to really take care of this, and Jesus, hopefully this doesn't spread, and you can tell the difference in that inner story. Both of which have a wound, both of which have an equal chance probably of getting infected. Really, if you stop and think about it, But like it's just your own judgment of it, is like making you either in fear or just not even bothered by it, just knowing that it's just going to heal itself. but you know, all healing is done by itself. You know, so there's really nothing that you can do. You know, and in acknowledging that only God can do the healing, and that healing is a state of consciousness that is already in existence. You know, creation being finished, it's about putting on the faith that this is already the reality, and that I don't need to sit here and worry about it. I don't need to be in fear about it. That there's a process that's going on. For, you know, there's only, the only person to work on is yourself. You know, so it's like when people around you are experiencing these different states of consciousness, you know, trusting that that God's working what God does, you know, that their inner conversations, their things, they're all playing out for them. They're reaping what they're sowing in consciousness. But if it's being brought to your attention and your awareness, it's also reflecting something going on within you. So without that going on within you, you wouldn't even be exposed to it. You wouldn't even be around that kind of a vibe, you know, but because on some level there's a miraculous event waiting to happen in the here and now, because it's only ever now, and it's only ever going to be now. You know, it's like this idea that it takes, you know, that was one of the things I was looking at. I was gave my dog some like basically like joint what do you call, what is it, this shit called, joint whatever, you know, for mobility. You know, it's supposed to help with inflammation and shit, you know, but like you know, on the back of it, it says it takes 4 to 6 weeks to take effect, you know, which doesn't make any sense, you know, unless they're talking about like, oh, there's like this process. But you know, anything that you ingest, I mean, it's like immediately starts going on. But like, you start realizing, okay, well, why does, you know, if I, you know, take this pain pill that takes like 60 minutes to take, you know, take effect, I've noticed sometimes, you know, if I take a Tylenol and like 5 minutes later, like a headache's gone. There's no physiology, you know, like physical way that that it can get from your stomach to your bloodstream to affect you that fast. You know, it's just another example about how your belief in the fact that this takes away pain does something. You know, and yeah, it's still something. It's a lot to, you know, unpack. You know, because there's a lot involved. And you know, why is this? Why is there even things in nature that have healing properties? You know, I mean, it's when you really stop and think about it. You know, why does that exist? You know, in nature. It's like, oh, well, you know, you eat this tree bark that you cook over a fire for 3 hours, and then all of a sudden, there you go, that takes your pain away. It's like, where did this even come from? You know, it's like, you know, I think about that sometimes with like jungle tribal people that are like in like the rainforest doing like ayahuasca and like all these like psychedelics. It's like, how did you even think to like do that? You know, it's like that doesn't, because it's like, oh, you got to boil this, you got to do this, you got to add this. It's like, what? You know, they didn't have Google to show them that, you know, so it's like, I feel like that's an example of like tapping into this infinite intelligence that provides the solutions in the same moment of either choosing hysteria and fear, disease and death, or health and healing. You know, recognizing which state you're occupying based on what you're seeing in the reflection of your surroundings. Yeah, it becomes easier and easier to go, okay, this is all being orchestrated. There's no coincidence. There's nothing accidental about this. So how, you know, what do I do? You know, what's going on? And in that act of kind of surrender, a lot of times the problem and the solution come at the same time. You know, so it's like part of the problem is just the hysterical thinking and the fear and reactivity, putting your attention on the problem, growing the problem, and by your own just unconscious you know, kind of thinking and shit, you know, it's easy to then drift into that state of thinking that you're separate, that you're thinking that, oh, you know, that person, that animal, that pet is separate from God, you know, somehow. You know, part of it is realizing that, you know, everything in creation has an aspect of divinity inherent in it, maybe being asleep, being dormant, but it's still there, you know. And as you kind of recognize that in others, you almost draw it forth in yourself. And you know, almost like in the way that electricity doesn't have like, oh, I need to think about moving from point A to point B. It just flows from point A to point B. It's that inner supply is the same type of way, where it's just like it does the work. You don't need to do the work. And part of the problem is you thinking that you do. Not to say if God gives you an inspired action to take, or a process to go through, that's one thing. But if you're kind of demonstrating faith and demonstrating your beliefs in the truth of God and the promises of God being true, and one of which that anything that you ask for in prayer, ask, believe, and receive, and it's yours according to Jesus. So either that's a true statement, or the entire Bible's bullshit. If there's going to be claims like that in the Bible, that this is the truth, this is the way things are, and if you put it to the test and it doesn't work, then that's bullshit. So it's like, I have found it not to be bullshit though. I found it to be the reality. And it's like, the more that the mental resistance and the drama and like the old slave thinking is started to be let go of and replaced with your new identity in Christ, the truth, of what God said is reality, the more you see that being reflected. And so it's a process of just a knowingness, a knowing that you're connected, a knowingness of who you are, a knowingness, more importantly, of who God is, and that all things are possible for God to do. And it's your faith that is ultimately being rewarded in either direction. If you get a faith in evil or faith in fear, you're not. You're in doubt. So if you're in a state of doubt, that starts to be reflected. And it's like, the more that you put your attention on these types of things and believing the old mind that puts you in doubt with these old beliefs and assumptions that are limiting, verifiably like not true in a lot of cases, and on a paradigm that's based on a reality that's not real either. And so drawing conclusions based on erroneous thinking of the past does not solve problems. It only perpetuates problems. So you keep thinking the same shit you used to think. Whenever these cycles will come to confront you, because everything kind of works cyclically in the present. And it's like you're moving up and down, not left and right. Like linear thinking goes past, present, future in a line. When quantum kind of is more of a circle. It's like you're continuously recreating yourself, these situations, because everything is being mirrored. And until you change yourself, the reflection is going to stay the same and just play out in theater as in different forms. And it's like, oh, you keep finding relationship issues, having the same issues with the same people. Well, then it's like, oh, if I just get new people, then I'll fix the problem. And then you get a new relationship, it's the same fucking thing. And so it plays out these dramas and everything, and it happens all over the place. It's like, if you're in money scarcity, it's like, well, if I just got a new job, I get a new opportunity, then I can. But then the same shit starts happening over and over again. And so it's like, until you change your thinking, which ultimately is just letting go of the thoughts that are slave-minded, matrix thinking, based on separation and fear. Perfect love casts out fear. So it's like, God is love. So it's like, part of like, a relationship with God is asking, how can this fear be relieved with the truth? What's love in this situation? It doesn't even make sense anymore what love is. It's like, my ideas of love are based on the world's examples of love, which in a lot of ways is just neediness. It's like, instead of saying I love you, it's like, I just really need you. I need you to be emotionally there for me, and like support me, and do all these things, for me, and if you don't do it in a way that pleases me, then fuck off. It's like, what does divine love look like? That doesn't have this kind of contrast to it, where it's like, well, part of it is realizing that the connected nature of things. It's like, as you hate and do shit for, negatively towards another, it comes back on you, because we're all one, we're all connected. So even if you do that in consciousness and in the form of thoughts, if you start attacking someone, say you and your wife got into an argument about something stupid, 10 minutes later, you're still just in your mind, just you may not even be like physically like speaking like negative words to them or arguing. It's just like just giving them silence. But in that silence, you're still just attacking them in your mind, and just like drama, drama, drama. That entire time that you're doing that in the present moment, there's a thought or a belief that somehow feels good. It kind of like it's like it serves a purpose. Like, oh, it feels good to attack somebody else. It feels good to attack them, make them suffer the way I'm suffering, type thing. But in that same time that you're doing that, you're just spinning out. You're just experiencing a lot of drama, and the other person could just be, well, he was like, what a bad mood he's in. I'm just gonna fiddle, do whatever. They could care less. You don't know what's going on in their consciousness, but it's like how you thinking that holding on to these attack thoughts will manipulate the other person to bend to your will. All it does is it just makes you more in a fucking messed up state of being. So it's like, catching those types of things faster and faster is important. But like, I think I'm gonna balance. I just wanted to kind of bring that to you guys. Something to think about at least. When it comes to like healing, medicine, and stuff like that. Something I'm putting into practice. With what's going on with my dog and the drama and fucking bullshit with them. Hopefully, get more and more positivity. More like results. As you continue to shift identity regarding these different situations. Not to let fear become the guide, but let love be the guide. It's always ever a choice that you make in the here and now. Either you're making that choice consciously or you're making it unconsciously. And if you're not making it consciously, a lot of times then you start to spiral into more and more states of unconsciousness, drama, fear, misery, torment, all that kind of bullshit, as you feel separate and powerless from the other person. But you have the power to change your mind about it, and trust God to do the work. It's not you that does the work, and it's in that surrender where you let go of that, where you're thinking, oh, these thoughts, if I just think the right thing, if I just believe the right shit, then that person will be okay, then that will happen. When you trust that, God's already healed them. It's like it's already a done thing because it's only ever now. That healing supply is already taking effect. It's getting better and better. It's all in the story that you're telling yourself. And if you're telling yourself the stories from the world, that just brings a lot of fear and slavery and drama and torment and everything else. But the teacher's within, so it's like, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. So thanks for listening. I appreciate your attention for this long. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. I appreciate the social network things, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that kind of fun stuff. And until the next now, God bless.